aspect, is there a plan where our institutions shall become mini industries? Finally, in terms of achievements, does the Ministry of Education have policy mechanisms of determining the short-term, the mid-term, and the long-term achievements of these investments available to all stakeholders? The issue is this, all the stakeholders. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll close that session and allow for our panelists to answer the questions. I believe you've been noting them down. Some of you have more than 4 questions directed to you. I think I'll start with UPS. Most of the questions were directed towards you.
On the question and issue of the CBIT transition, we're looking at a transition period of 2 years. And in those 2 years, NEC and any other form of examination will simply be rolled over and transitioned out. Competency-based education is the primary educational system, primarily because it's inclusive and addresses the very values that we're trying to achieve in terms of our national values of access, equity, quality, and relevance. And therefore, CBIT will transition all other frameworks out of our TVET institutions over the next 2 years. And instead, what will take place is that you'll have a level system between level 1 and 6 and on to diploma systems. It's true that we have a staff shortage in view of the expansion of TVET. We have approximately only 4,000 trainers, and we need to add at least another 2,000 trainers. Towards that aim, 1,000 trainers have been approved in the last supplementary budget, and we're creating the frameworks and structures within the government to ensure that we create dedicated service schemes that transform their performance and commitment to technical vocational education training. In the next supplementary budget, we hope to get another 1,000.
Okay.
But this is one of the urgent issues that we nationally need to solve, and we need commitments to ensure that we're able to effectively increase the number of trainers. But at the same time, I'm asking the principals here to also think of creative schemes where we're able to bring in the productive sector in some sort of capacity to be adjunct trainers and to complement existing training capacities. So to design and to research and to create innovative schemes and policy structures that address this in the most creative, resourceful, and ingenious way. The aspects of competency-based education training, principals have been sensitized on the CBIT framework for some time now, I think several years, since the legislation was assented to. Various missions have been put in place in order to further sensitize principals on this highly transformative feature of competency-based education training. Finally, there's a CBIT framework and policy that has been launched recently. I think it's very important that we understand it and fully are able to implement it. This is a key responsibility of principals, because after all, principals head institutions and they're heading the transformation as well as the implementation of competency-based education training. This brings me to my final thought to some of the questions that have been put. We're looking into creating a highly responsive, dynamic, flexible system through the very arteries of education in this country. And those of you who are responsible of leading your organizations need to also reflect that the CBIT system enables you a lot more freedom to promote greater inclusivity in addressing those values. And so it'll be up to you to promote extensions. After all, we're transitioning our silo-based TVETs into community colleges, which are supposed to serve farmers, all stakeholders of communities, to ensure that they're able to live up to the various aspirations that they're trying to achieve. And so CBIT systems and CBIT training institutions need to have that focus, and it requires our principals to ensure that they engage the productive sector, the county governments, the civil society, all other stakeholders to mobilize resources, to mobilize support, to mobilize commitment. And only this will ensure that we're able to achieve this mandate to roll it all over and to ensure that it's as inclusive as possible.
All right, Dr. Gwantai, there are some questions for Sida.
Yes, a question from Mr. Kuja. Preparedness for us to carry out competency-based assessment. I'm aware, and this is not personal. I've conducted a number of training at Meru National Polytechnic, where Wanarukunja is the principal. And in this case, what I'm saying, we have trained 1,300 trainers out of the available 4,000 on competency-based education and training assessment, as well as how to develop the occupational standards and how to link the assessment with the occupational standards. Then what I may say is very simple. In order for you to conduct the assessment, you require the occupational standards, you require the tools, you require the assessors who are the trainers to be assessed, you require the assessment centers, you require various guidelines, and then the mode of certification. Might start with the last one, if you allow me.
Yes, quickly.
Yes, with certification here, you are allowed, or in other words, you can get two types of qualifications. You can get a national qualification having been assessed against the various competencies in the occupational standards, all of them. At the same time, you can get a partial qualification if you have met the basic competencies as well as at least one of the core competencies. And with this, even our current students now, I'm answering the second question because there's one from Madam Otue.
Yes.
Even our current trainers who are in the around the NEC or the KICD curriculum, they can be assessed against the occupational standards developed by the industry and issued a certificate.
All right.
That is what I can say. So there is no way we will say that we are putting even KICD or NEC away. You know, we cannot demonize the system of the KICD or even the NEC. Because even you, me, and HTC, all of us, almost a number of us here, were assessed by those bodies, and we are talking about the reforms. We are talking about reforms here. So what we are saying is this: how do we implement? We go ahead to train the others who are remaining. But the best and the simplest way to ensure we roll out is this, because you must have a strategy. Which program do you want to implement? Fashion and design? Yes. Which other program? Bring your trainers, and then they are trained depending on the programs you want to implement. Because I know not that you implement all the 150 programs at a go.
All right. Okay, we have more responses. Dr. Langat, before we go to the other end.
Yes,
quickly, I understand we don't have much time.
Probably touch on implementation of the CBET curriculum. I think our recommendation is that we work on a phase-out program, and it is possible to do dual training or certification, that the current students who are doing NEC programs can be assessed in CBET, and they can still continue to do the NEC program at the end of that module, at the same time be given CBET certification. Two, you know the requirement for implementing a new curriculum. So those of you who are ready, you have to submit the formal application to implement any of the CBET curriculum that have been developed. And what we are recommending is assess the capacity of your institution in terms of all aspects, see one or two of those curricula that you can implement, submit application for the same. We are going to give you first priority in terms of approval.
All right.
Finally, our long-term and sustainable approach is to set national systems that are working. I think we are in serious conversation with Ken QA SIDAC and NITA to develop national system. In this case, we are going to have a database of all training providers. We are going to have a database of all trainers, database of all the verifiers and assessors, so that and assessment centers, so that you can work to any of those which have been certified nationally and you can implement your system. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Muhwana, to you, I would advise that we keep it short. We don't have too much time. Thank you.
I know now I'm standing between your lunch.
You do.
And, so I'll touch on two quick things. On the CBED program, I think what we have said is, as a nation, we are now working towards building a national framework so that we do not have, because we all need to consult industry. So the national, we are talking about the National Skills Council, so that SIDAC does not engage with part of industry, KNQA engages with part of industry, TVETA engages with part of industry, who like ANITA and so on, who like to come up with a harmonized system where we have a national standing skills council that we can all use and so on. On the question of Geoffrey about the East African community and different qualifications, we need to differentiate between an educational system and a qualification framework. The qualification framework, as I said, defines the country's qualifications and the interrelationships between them. So I know that, for example, in Uganda, as I said, Uganda goes to Form 6 before you go to university. But by international protocol, Uganda Advanced Certificate of Education is equivalent to a Form 4 certificate in Kenya. And a diploma, once Uganda has defined its level for a certificate, that level becomes equivalent to Kenya. Once they have defined their level of the bachelor's degree, even if it's level 8, it becomes equivalent to level 7 because our degree is level 7.
Okay.
So we have no problem as long as they have defined the competences that come out of it, and we can see that those competences, we are acquiring them at which level in Kenya.
All right.
So that's the way it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Maxelas, there was a question for you. How do we make it work like Germany has? Very quickly.
Yes, I really like your question, although I fear that my answer may disappoint you, because there's no such thing. I mean, it's why I like your question is because that's what UNIVOC is really about. For countries to be able to look at what is happening and what can we copy or what can we learn from. But you'll always have to look at the specific situation, and you have to look at what your conditions are in your respective area. So you cannot copy something that works in Germany and implement it somewhere else. You cannot take something that works in a highly industrialized country and then copy it and think that it may work in a developing country. So we promote promising practices. We do not say best practices, but we say promising practices because we want to make sure that people understand that there's no good practice as such. You have to make it work on the ground under local conditions.
All right. Thank you very much. That marks the end of our session. Gentlemen, thank you very much. My panelists, once again, Mr. Maxelas, the Associate Officer at the UNESCO UNIVOC office in Bonn, Germany. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Juma Muhwana is the CEO of the Kenya National Qualifications Authority. Thank you, Dr. Juma, for being with us here today. Dr. Kevit Desai, very sorry about that, the Principal Secretary, Vocational and Technical Education. Dr. Gwantai, the CEO of Curriculum Development and Certification Council, as well as Dr. Kipkirui Langat, the CEO of Technical and Vocational Education Training Authority, TVETA. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us here today. A round of applause for our gentlemen. I hope we are going back home with some of the answers we came with regards to an array of issues surrounding TVET. Thank you for being with us. I will now hand it over to our MC once again. My name is Akisa Wandera. I'll now hand over the program to our MC because I believe it's lunchtime for both us and those viewers watching us from home. Up next, KTN News Desk for you.